So, hello, Dr. Gupta.
Good
Thank
morning,
you.
good morning, Kumar.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for doing this. So, this is basically a podcast to talk about semiconductors. And we both agree that semiconductor is something that hasn't got its due in this country, especially the manufacturing and all the other bits apart from design, which has had a long presence in this country. So the idea is to talk about everything around semiconductors. How are the policy being formed? How are the policy taking shape? What are the future? Do you see that there is a lot of boom in terms of jobs and employment? So we'll come to each of that. But first, we would like to sort of ask you to give us a little bit of your background and how your journey into semiconductor has led to this point. Specifically, because I have done my research and realized that you did your bachelor's in non-electronics background, right? So from there to electronics, how has been the journey?
Yeah. I did my bachelor's actually in the Triple E Bombay planning, which is electrical and electronics engineering,
Okay.
and then moved to basically IIT Delhi to do my MTech and basically also a project under Dr. Kumar, which was the first and very early attempt to build a silicon compiler from basically very high level description of the function to basically a layout ready to be taped out, right? Very early, it was like in 1983, I joined the project. And then in 1988, I moved to do my PhD in basically Old Dominion University, Virginia, where basically we looked at the many architectural and parallel architecture, neural networks, computational problems, how they can be basically mapped to high performance computing. Then through that, basically, after I finished my PhD, I joined Intel. Intel had worked basically in various aspects, basically first in the high performance computing, and we were able to achieve the first teraflop in the world. Today it looks very small number, but in 1994 that was a very big deal, and also created the fastest computer in the world based on the Paragon architecture. Later on, I moved to basically strategic CAD labs, which used to develop the technologies for new generation of a microprocessor. And we did basically a silicon compiler kind of a thing for very high speed logic called domino logic at that point of time. And then basically that went into Pentium 2 microprocessor. After that, basically, we started a ASIC division within Intel called Intel Microelectronics. Did about basically 26 tapeouts for basically global clients. You can take Intel Microelectronics as a generation -2 of the current IFS, right? Basically, that was the Intel's effort into get into foundry business in late 90s, around 99 timeframe. For various reasons, that venture did not basically move forward. So in 2003, we came out, and with Intel's blessing, we started basically a company called Open Silicon. And that became one of the largest fabless AC companies in the world, got acquired for $245 million. Later on, that became Sci-Fi, and now it has become Alpha Wave, right? So, and after I moved out of the Open Silicon, then we had basically couple of more startups, Concept to Silicon, Sensop, and 2 years back I started with Ajay Chaudhary and Ajay Mehta, this organization called Epic Foundation. The whole idea was that we need to do products in India, not just basically services or manufacturing, because products is what define basically a domain, a sector, or a country, not just the manufacturing, not just the basically services. And we did couple of basically we made first completely designed in India tablet, which is globally competitive both in quality and price, right? So, and then basically we did GaN-based chargers and other products. Right? So currently, in addition to manufacturing, my focus is to take all the necessary ingredients which are present in the ecosystem and make India an electronics and semiconductor product nation, right? So that basically manufacturing can prosper, design can prosper, services can prosper. If the products are an anchor, whether it's the semiconductor products or electronics products, rest of the industry basically evolves and go to the forward-looking space as we create more and more products.
Thank you. Thank you. So, since we are talking about product, in general, apart from the obvious answer of having a lot of capital, why do you think countries like India don't focus that much on, and this is regardless of semiconductor, this could be industry agnostic, there's a lot of service based economy that we sort of thrive on, and we do really great job at it because of the low manpower cost. But do you think in terms of mental sort of block, why do you think that people don't focus on product in general?
So, I think various factors, as you said, we started in software and services, right? And it took almost India about 20 to 25 years to start doing the product in the software area, so, right? And some of that basically was started because of the programs which were supported by the government, right? Things like Aadhaar, things like UPI, senior, and so on and so forth. Around that, basically, other software products started coming in last basically 3 to 5 years. Right? I think same thing has to happen in the hardware. Any product basically takes more investment, more gestation period, and basically certainly higher risk also, right? So we have not spent basically enough effort from the government side or basically enough incentives for product creation, right? Other basically, most of the incentives, if you see other electronics or semiconductors, right, have gone into manufacturing. Okay? So if you look like PLI, $20 billion plus is purely for the manufacturing. The semiconductor $10 billion is again for the manufacturing. So there's a small portion, basically about 1,000 to 2,000 crore, first time assigned for a design with incentive. So what we need to do, in my opinion, is that if we spend $1 on manufacturing incentive, if we take 10 cents out of that $1, then invest in providing the incentives to the industry, not for basically research and things like directly to the industry. 10 cents out of $1, I think we can convert India as a product nation because we have rest of the ingredients already there.
Okay, that's great. So you have been part of India's semiconductor journey for quite a while, and these days everyone is talking about semiconductor. Semiconductor is the new data, semiconductor is the new oil, right? And there seems to be a lot of positive enthusiasm, both in terms of industry people, in terms of academicians, in terms of people who are studying to become a semiconductor VLSI engineers. But we know that India has been trying to do semiconductor for at least 40 years, right? I am not sure about the authenticity of the report, but from what I know, Fairchild was interested in setting up a fab in India like 50 plus years ago, right? And since then, it's to 2023. So the two questions in this one, that how has been the journey and why we have not sort of been able to get into the bus, as they say. And the second part is that what exactly happened, what exactly changed in the last few years that we are now sort of accelerating towards getting into the bus, or maybe we have taken the first step into the bus.
I think my personal opinion about this, some of the past efforts were very good. Things like setting up the SCL in basically early 80s, right? I think with zero point 0.5 micron technology, whatever we started. Because I think that was pretty much like there. But I think somewhere the global landscape moved more towards basically private industry rather than basically global, since government supported, right? So we still remain in the government and PSU regime in early 80s, right? Whereas the rest of the world moved to a industry, maybe supported by the government, but all of the semiconductor development kind of happened basically through industry. Uh, Industry means, I mean, it's a private industry, right? So I think somewhere, maybe in 90s or so, we could have basically moved more towards the private industry. But that's a kind of a past. And since basically 2009 or so, right, there have been multiple efforts, right? And pretty laudable efforts in terms of the policies and other things, right? But we did not get basically more international semiconductor companies get interested. There were efforts by more like entrepreneurs, things like HSMC and others, right? But as you will understand that I have not seen, at least in last 15 years, any semiconductor manufacturing being basically established by entrepreneurs, right? It has always been basically big companies either existing or new, right? So we did not get basically large companies who are into this. Now, what has changed, right? First of all, I think this time around, the policy is very clear and basically holistic. It's not about we will do something, it's all well written, well basically positioned. Right? So international companies don't want to get into the situation that, okay, come over, we will talk, right? We have to want more clearly articulated policy, right? So which is basically current thing. Second thing is, I think the overall geopolitical situation has changed over the last basically at least 4 to 5 years. About every country trying to build their semiconductor ecosystem, both products and manufacturing. And third, and I think most important is the market. We have a very strong market pool at this point of the time. Which probably was not true 10 to 15 years back. Right? And why I say market pool is very important for bringing any kind of large investment in manufacturing. If you look at the US, US only had about 6% of the manufacturing, couple of companies only, but they could attract everybody. I mean to say everybody from the global semiconductor manufacturing because TSMC's largest customer is sitting in the US. Global Foundry's largest customer is sitting in the US, right? So I think that customer pool is basically very important. India is getting there, although we don't have many semiconductor product companies, but rest of the market is creating a strong pool. And I want to reiterate, if you want to be basically very strong in semiconductors, we have to have products. We have to have basically large product companies which are fabless because even if you put basically 3, 4, 5 fabs, you will not be able to cater to everybody's need, right? You still have to go global and fabless companies have to be established, right? I want to see a time when basically all the fabless companies together in India are preparing 1 lakh wafers per month. I think that's when basically the situation will change. Today we might be basically less than 10,000 wafers, or let's say less than 5,000 wafers per month overall consumption of the wafers in the country, right? I think once we change it to 1 lakh wafers, every semiconductor manufacturing company will take a notice and try to basically utilize the incentives because incentives alone will not work. The other factors also have to come up.
1 lakh wafers sounds like a dream as of now. When I was in global, we used to do like 60,000 wafers a month. And at that point in time, I could never sort of acknowledge the significance of it, right? But now that I look at it, and when you hear that the kind of wafer tape outs that India does, then you start to realize the magnitude things we're working on, right?
You can say 5% of the global wafer capacity should be consumed by the Indian fabless product companies. If I want to put it in a different way, right? 1 lakh paper may not put the right context in terms of the audience, but if we can do 5% of the wafer consumption through Indian fabless product companies, I think we will be in great shape. Every manufacturing company will be interested, every packaging company will be interested, every supply chain company will be interested if we could do that.
Okay, and since we are talking about fabless companies, so there is a lot of sort of people talking about manufacturing fab, and now with Micron, ATMP, there are sort of news of OSATs being established, but there isn't much sort of talk about, or not to the best that I have heard, is a lot of companies sort of doing what Nvidia does or what AMD does, right? But India has had a history of companies providing design services, right? What do you think is the gap between providing design services to the point that they start sort of doing state of the art designs, and what is it that is being done, or what is it that needs to be done to bridge that gap?
Absolutely. So, to build a comprehensive ecosystem, you need design, you need manufacturing, you need basically semiconductor product companies and everybody, right? Now, if you look at the semiconductor product companies, although it has been slow, but that's where we had basically a couple of good golden nuggets, right? Where several fabless companies over last decades have had basically good commercial success and been acquired by the basically large global semiconductor companies, things like Cosmic or Sterling and so there are about half a dozen of basically these companies which basically have a pretty good success. And now realizing that if you have to build a comprehensive semiconductor landscape in India, just manufacturing is not enough. As part of the government basically incentive scheme, there has been a design-led incentive which is primarily targeted for the fabless products and IT companies. The goal is to basically have 100 fabless companies basically in the next couple of years. And the incentives provided under the designing incentive scheme is, I think, one of the best in the world, right? 50% of the project cost plus free EDA tools, which constitute another 15%. So 65% of the project cost is being basically incentivized by the government, which basically kind of make investment from the venture community more viable because the risk is now reduced by 1/3. The government is not taking any equity or any other basically involvement in the operating the company, right? So it's a basically free enterprise with basically government bearing about 65% of cost. About 8 companies under DLI scheme have already been approved in the last couple of months, and I think every month or two we add 2 to 3 companies more. And not just basically veterans. Under the DLI scheme, we see a lot of basically new generation entrepreneurs also coming up and setting up these fabless companies. Yes, it's still a long way for them to become basically MediaTek or Nvidia. You see, MediaTek, right, probably the latest of the large semiconductor companies, they started as a basically a small display driver type of the IC, and today they became basically big. Right? I think there is a potential, but to create a Qualcomm or MediaTek or AMD or NVIDIA, it will take time. It will take at least a dozen years and so on and so forth. Right? So I think we are not there yet, but I think the right attention is being paid to semiconductor fabless product companies, also along with the manufacturing companies.
Okay. A lot of people who sort of believe that India should not be going into manufacturing and there are other value chains that could be captured by India. And the argument sort of gets its strength from the fact that not a lot of companies in the world do semiconductor manufacturing, right? Even US is sort of struggling to get back its manufacturing. So if you take that out, I think it would be maximum 5 to 10 countries at best who are sort of like doubling down or even pulling up semiconductor manufacturing. For a country like India, which always is a country where there can be multiple industries to be doubled down upon, why do you think that manufacturing is something that we should do or not? And why not focus on the other value chains? And because the capital incentive for the manufacturing would sort of be the 50% of everything else together, right? What do you think about that?
So I think you have to look at it from a very global perspective. Not having a semiconductor technology for a aspirational India, which want to become basically third or fourth largest basically economic country in the world, is not an option. Because every other industry, it's not just about semiconductor industry, every other industry today and more so in the future will depend on semiconductor and by corollary electronics. So I think it's not an option for India not to be a player in this thing, right? So and when people say why this, why not this, right? I think we need everything. Okay. Maybe in a different sequence, we need fabless product companies, we need ATMPs, we need semiconductor manufacturing, we need compound semiconductor manufacturing for power electronics, we need basically chemical and gas supplies, okay? We need equipment manufacturing because we don't know how the global geopolitics is going to play, right? So not having this important technology is today not an option for India. And so that's the necessity part of it. But on the other side, it also makes every other industry better, especially like electronics. We are doing a lot of electronics manufacturing, but our domestic value addition is very small. Some of the reasons we talked earlier that we don't do our own products, right? So if I look at electronics level, right, about 90% plus products are from the global companies. Less than 10% basically products are from the domestic companies, right? And if you don't have products from the domestic companies, right, it has multiple implications. First is obviously economics, because if you are manufacturing for global companies, you add only 8 to 10% of value addition. But if you are doing your own products, you add basically 30 to 40% value addition. Right? We have to still use for our own products global supply chain, but product ownership brings basically the 32% value addition. But the biggest basically takeoff from domestic products is that you start deciding what semiconductor to use and where to buy it from. If I'm basically manufacturing from the global company, if I take basically one of the large phone manufacturing companies, their supply chain decisions are made in Cupertino, not in India, right? They purchase order from basically US or China or somewhere else, right? So if I'm a global semiconductor company, I don't see any PO from India, right? If I don't see a PO from India, I say, oh, basically, let me work with somebody who can give me a PO. That's how basically any business works, right? But if you are domestic product company, let's say from about 7-8% market share today, if you go to a 30% market share of domestic electronics products, right, that will create a huge product say demand for semiconductors. Right now we have a lot of consumption of semiconductors, but we need to convert that into demand of semiconductors. And that's where the products will come, whether it's a semiconductor products or electronics products. They will drive the manufacturing, they will drive basically ATM2, they will drive the supply chain, they will drive the other global companies to come and invest in India.
Okay. So that is about the opportunity that India sort of poses. The next sort of thing is to think, what is the risk? Both from Indian point of view, from an industry who wants to sort of put a lot of money to India, what is the risk in this sort of whole ecosystem?
So there will be. So let's first talk about manufacturing, then we'll come to product.
Sure.
In the manufacturing space, there will be two types of the companies. One is basically global companies who wants to expand basically their operations, either because of the market pool or the incentives or manpower or any other reason. Right? For example, in cases of micron technology, right? They want to do just extending themselves. Right? So in those cases, the risk is very minimal because the risk typically comes from the business side, not on the technology side. Right? If I make something, will I be able to sell it? Okay? But in case of the expansion of basically global semiconductor companies, that risk is minimal. Obviously, any company can go through the basically semiconductor up and down cycle, but that risk is minimal for a global company to expand. Now, the companies like Vedanta, okay? So they are not basically a entrenched player. They are basically kind of what we call greenfield fab, right? I think the biggest challenge for them is will they be able to find enough market for their wafers?
Okay.
And that's where the risk lies, right? Because as you understand, if my fab is not loaded 90%, then I will basically be losing money, right? So finding enough customers to basically sign up for their wafers and they have to work out the right strategy, how to engage with the new customers as well as the customers who are manufacturing their other products. Right? Why will they move, right? If I'm already basically manufacturing at TSMC and UMC, there has to be right strategy for taking some part of that volume into basically Indian foundry, right? And both government and basically people who are putting up this fab have to figure out the right model that why would somebody move from TSMC? Why would somebody move from global foundry to your fab, right? What is their pull? What is basically their questions which basically needs to be answered? How much time will it take? What kind of yield I'm going to get? What kind of supplies I'm going to get, right? Because nobody wants to risk their supply chain, so it's very difficult decision for everybody to move from one fab to another fab. And you have been at global foundry, so you understand that it's not easy. So, greenfield fab like Vedanta, I think that is, in my opinion, the biggest challenge. Obviously, having the right technology and right technical team is also equally important, but I think those are only time-bound things. You can see like it took some time for Vedanta, but now they have a good technical team in place. Okay? And I think I can see the remarkable difference after this team led by David Reed came on board, right? And I think now they will solve basically the technology part, the problem also. But the biggest problem still remains in the customer. I think everything else is solvable by putting more money and putting more effort, right? I think that's the can be done. But solving the customer problem will be the most critical for any of the greenfield site. So, uh,
Okay, since you talked about David Reed, there are a lot of people who believe that Indian bureaucracy is something that sort of is a very sarkari way of old style school, slow things. Files don't move the way it should. Given that there is a lot of, and even Vedanta CEO and the chairman Akash Haber, right? He also sort of says that there will be a lot of expats who will be running the show, at least at the top, right? How do you see that criticism of Indian bureaucracy posing a risk if you want to sort of build a ecosystem of this magnitude?
see, there are two aspects to it, right? I think if you look globally, if these kind of the policies take some time to basically get the law from the highest authorities in the country and implementation, right? If you take example of US, the CHIPS Act took almost basically 2 years to get, right? If you look at the European Union, basically equivalent of CHIPS Act, right? Again, it took 2 years to pass, right? So people will say on the policy level we are slow. I think there might be a delta here and there, but I think it's not like we are taking 5 times more time than basically other countries. It might be, let's say, 10-20% different, right? Policy level. That's saying this thing, the bureaucrats can take good care of policies and things like that, right? But one thing I'm noticing, right, is just like I see a strong turnaround from Vedanta after we got basically professionals with semiconductor experience at their hand. I think we need the same on the government side also. Right? There was a plan to hire a professional CEO to run India Semiconductor Mission. All the bureaucrats are doing good job, but basically having a professional person with basically global experience, global connects, global network, you can talk the same language as the person sitting on the other side of the table, right? I think that will enhance the basically efficacy of the bureaucracy and the ministers also, right? So, as a person who has been basically part of the semiconductor ecosystem, right? And when I say sometimes it may not be a fab guy, it's somebody who understands the semiconductor ecosystem, somebody who knows what works, what doesn't work, right? Somebody who can create the right strategy, somebody who can have the right connect, right? Because this person is not going to run fast. His job is to make India Semiconductor Mission successful, right? People who come as an investor make them successful, right? Help them with the technology partnership, help them with the basically people, help them basically the things which they need through their global connects and understanding of the ecosystem, right? I think we have been little slow on that thing. Okay. If you can expedite getting a good, it may not be the best, right? Basically, we can't find a Morris Chang of India that easily, right? But whatever best we can do, if you can get a person who understands the semiconductor ecosystem, right? So Morris Chan's job was to put up the fab. ISM CEO's job is not to put up the fab, but basically creating the right ecosystem, right? Which is product design, manufacturing, ATM, supply chain, understanding the whole thing, right? I think that will expedite things and that will make the bureaucracy and ministers more basically effective and efficient in what they do.
Yeah, just to add to your point, although the CEO is someone that ISM hasn't got yet, but ISM constantly hires consultants, and these consultants are all people who have worked in international fabs. So, for example, recently one of my IIT colleagues got hired for the OSAT and ATMP sort of roles. So, the roles for those consultants is to evaluate the proposals that get submitted and to understand and then sort of their experience.
But I think when I look at the basically very vision level, the leadership levels, okay, you can always find basically people doing the individual functions, right? But somebody who can be a spokesperson of ISM, somebody who can sit with people like that Gelsinger across the table, right? I think we need that leadership, right? Basically good people who are on the payrolls of ISM. But I think if we can solve this leadership problem, I think things will basically start looking much better.
Okay, so this is more of a projection thing, but where do you see 5 years and 10 years from now, India's sort of things in terms of fabs, in terms of design, in terms of revenue, whichever is something that you think is more quantifiable, 5 years and 10 years from now?
In 5 years, I see, let me put basically very quantitative numbers, right? 2 ATMP plants, 2 compound semiconductor fabs, and 2 silicon fabs, right? Should be operational and running in basically 5 years' time.
Okay.
On the product side, at least basically about 100 fabulous companies onboarded, and maybe about 5 of them basically get to a revenue of $5 million each.
Okay. And 10 years?
Who knows? But basically, I think if we continue on this path, right, probably we can do I will not say too many fabs, right, because I think that's not linearly or exponentially scalable problem, but I think about basically 10 different types of the manufacturing units could be ATMP, compound, or basically silicon or display, and basically 100 companies with basically at least 25 of them basically going beyond basically $25 million revenue, and maybe in 10 years we should see a couple of unicorns coming from the at least 2 unicorns coming from the semiconductor product design perspective.
I really like the optimism. I really want all of them to be true for us and for the country and for the world.
These are realistic estimates. I think we are doing the right thing. I will not say there are news that basically suddenly a Taiwanese company will put 4 fabs in India. I think I don't go with those kind of claims, but I think having 2 ATMP, 2 compound, and 2 silicon fabs in 5 years is very realistic. I think we've already done 15% of the job this month signing up, and I think within 6 months we'll reach to 50% of the goal of having a 6 unit, right? I really think basically by March, when the financial year ends for India 2024, right? 23-24, we will have at least 80% of the 6 manufacturing units finalized, right? And I'm saying with a lot of confidence because I know who are the people who are trying to do this kind of thing, right? I think it will happen.
Okay. So one of the biggest components that is said as a positive for people to sort of bring into their semiconductor business here is the manpower, right? And one of the things that it says that India gets a low manpower cost compared to American, for sure American, but nowadays Taiwanese as well as Chinese, and somewhat very similar to Vietnam manpower costs, right? Now, first question, which is on a lighter side, do you see ECE and EE getting beyond CS in terms of the top colleges and in terms of getting the job and getting the package? And B, which is the more sort of serious note, is in terms of the talent. I get a lot of questions from a lot of people who are not studying in the top colleges of this country. How do you see them sort of navigating their career in order to be ready for this run? Or is it too early for them because it's going to take a few years?
So let's take the first question first. CS versus electronics, right? I think there's a problem there. most of the brightest students want to basically take computer science as a career when they basically get into their college. And I think that's a real problem. I see two primary reasons for that. Right? One thing is that we are not marketed the electronics and semiconductor jobs properly. People are, when I talk to a lot of colleges and a lot of students, and I'm saying it from the first and Veda, they don't understand that what are the career choices in electronics and semiconductor is that what kind of the packages, what kind of the long-term career. So I think as a community, including you, me, and everybody, we have not done a good job of marketing basically electronics and semiconductor as a career. As far as basically, obviously a kid from a tier 2 college, when he's graduating, he's looking at a job and package, right? If you look at average CS guy versus average electronics guy, or an average semiconductor guy, I think the initial packages and where do they end up basically 5 years down the road is, I think, very promising. It's, most of the cases it's much better than basically a typical IT job, right? Because when you do a computer science course from a tier 2 institute, you are going to get a job in IT services, right? And if you have done basically good job of learning electronics and VLSI design, right? I think the initial and 5-year down remuneration and career prospects will be much better. But we are not marketed that.
One of the reasons we are doing this podcast and the subsequent things that I'm planning is to do that and to bring that awareness in the community.
Yeah, and we have to do basically a previous program. Second thing is that basically this is little bit hatke from everybody's thought, right? We are made through basically intellectual dissemination about the semiconductors and VLSI design. We are intimidated ourselves.
Okay. Okay.
We project every forum I go, every basically conference I go, everybody wants to basically boast how complex this technology is. Okay. I'm not attending a conference where basically the statements like, oh, the transistor is like 10,000 times basically smaller than a hair. Who cares? Right? So air has to be basically 100,000 times pure than basically outside air. Does an engineer getting into basically a VLSI semiconductor domain, how does it matter to his life? He's going to see a basically 2-inch by 2-inch transistor on his screen. That's all he's going to see, right? And which is as easy to build basically as a software course. So we are basically by talking about all of these complexities in every potential forum, right? You see a kid coming out of class, right? If it sees that this technology is so great, but at the same time so complex, right? He shies away, right? And basically, that is another reason why people choose CS over this. They think programming is easy, so design is hard. And we are doing that, right? Writing a very rough code, how is it different than writing a basically Python code? Right? I'm not oversimplifying things, but basically what I'm trying to say is that we don't have to make it so tough and so complex for basically kids, right? Kids should think that basically, yeah, I can basically take 4 weeks and make a small basically chip. Just like they think about the software, right? The software is also not easy. The Android basically operating system is probably more complex than any chip which we build, right? But nobody goes and tells that basically Android operating system requires basically 1 lakh people and 10 years and basically a couple of 100 million lines of code, right? I've not seen anybody talking about it, right? So software industry has simplified basically computer science for basically young kids. We have, on the other hand, we have made it very intimidating, right? So I think all of us should basically try to simplify that when you get into the job stream, you are not going to design a 1 billion transistor chip, right? You are going to design a small block with a couple of 100,000 bits, and that also is just like a software compilation process. You write the code, you compile this thing, optimize, and you go, right? The design is the same way. Very little different, but why a first year guy has to basically bother about billion transistor chip, right?
That's a very interesting point of view. I've never heard someone talking. Most of the conversations around this has been around numbers and the package that computer science gives. But I think what you're saying, given it sort of gets integrated into the curriculum and a lot of coaching centers that sort of teaches VLSI, the most of the emphasis what I have seen is around the fact that this will get you that kind of job, this will give you that kind of job, this will give you that kind of job. There isn't a desirability that gets created. It's very survivability kind of thing, which is something that is true for a lot of things, that if you're not from the premier colleges of this country, you're always looked as getting a job, not like finding a passion for it, finding the beauty for it, right? But to the corollary to that question, how do you see someone who is about to pass from a VLSI program or sort of considering taking a software bachelor's or this, especially because once chat GPT has come, there has been a lot of conversations around software being a commoditized, right, and hardware taking sort of the center stage, because that is something that is the chances of a code doing that job would be relatively further in time compared to a software, right? For those students and for those early stage professionals, how do you see them sort of navigate them, and what would your advice be? A, they should go abroad and gain experience from foundries. B, they should stay here, work on their own ideas. C, get a job in Intels and Microns and global foundries of inside the country. How should you, and I'm also talking about people who are not getting the job offers from these colleges, because these colleges sort of get their seats full by top colleges, right? So how do you see them navigating their career?
First of all, right, there are enough job opportunities in the industry, in domestically and globally also. Domestic also, we need a lot of engineers compared to what we produce.
Today, you mean?
Right?
Okay.
So, if you look at the current projection, right, we need somewhere between 20 to 25,000 VLSI design engineers every year. Okay. And depending on how the manufacturing progresses, right, we will need basically good number of the technicians running this factory, right? Somewhere basically 5,000 to 10,000 number of technicians, right? So putting an average number of 2,000 technicians on a $2 to $3 billion investment, whether it's AT&T or a right? So you can say $2 billion for 2,000 technician job, right? So you can say basically easily 10,000 technicians will be needed, right? Now, these technicians are more basically skilled workers type of job, and then they are engineering job, and then basically they are more masters and PhD level job, right? But I think the bulk is still the VLSI design engineering job, which is 20 to 25,000 ballpark estimation every year. So somewhere around 1 lakh to 1.25 lakhs basically over the next 5 years, right? I think couple of things, in my opinion, would be done, and I think we have been somewhat successful. Right? In 2020, basically Professor Ram Gopal Rao and I kind of proposed to AICTE that we should start a BTech program in VLSI design. Right? Just like 15 years back, we started electronics and communication engineering. We said we should take the time based on the need and the demand domestically and globally. Electronics and VLSI design program is really makes a lot of sense. Somewhere basically 22 that program was approved by AICT. And I tell you why it is important. It's not just if you're starting a BTech program, right? I think we need to get the young kids interested in electronics and semiconductors from an early age, right? By the time they do basically 4 years and then get to MTech, only basically handful of people choose that as a basically kind of person, right? So curiosity or basically interest in a subject, right, gets created early into your career. So if we can basically propagate this BTech program in not thousands of colleges, but at least basically 100 to 200 colleges over the next basically couple of years, right? And not just building a regular curriculum, but start teaching them something interesting from the first year itself, right? If you go and look at a typical curriculum, right? First year there is nothing interesting. Okay? Same building the physics again, chemistry again, biology again, English, humanities, and this and that. Right? My personal opinion is that today's kids are much more ready to absorb basically complex things in their first year itself compared to what we were prepared. Right? Our knowledge of the world, knowledge of basically technology, ability to absorb was not that much, so we needed 1 year to prepare and all of this kind of thing. I think today's kids are not like this. Right? So I want to say that start basically this kind of programs in undergraduate level. Start the interesting courses early. Don't wait till basically third or fourth semester to teach the first electronics course. Right? You can start a basic electronics course in the first semester itself, right? बच्चे बोर नहीं होंगे.
सही बात.
Otherwise, I have basically already prepared for JEE. All the competitive exams have been basically doing the physics, chemistry, maths, all the time, right? And I see another 1 year of doing the same thing, right? I think 20% of the courses, even in the first year, should basically be geared toward their interest development in whatever the core subject they have, right? Because 2 साल के बाद आदमी बोर हो जाता है. Then they just want to pass out and job because 4th year is anyway gone. So nobody basically pays any attention to the studies in the 4th year the way our system is. And I can understand the young kids want to get job and have fun, right? 4th year निकल गया, 1st year निकल गया, so then they are left with basically only 2 years, right? So why don't you make the first year interesting? So start them out of the 12th grade only. Basically, have some number of institutes adopt this 4-year program and make the first year interesting. Make the whole course more practical oriented. Right? It's not tough, right? Basically, if I have to teach somebody to write a Verilog in second semester, why it is tough? If I can teach them Python, I can teach them Verilog.
For sure.
Somehow we think that, oh, it's too early. I think it's too late because if I see the difference between top colleges in the US, right? But the second year, basically, they design a 8-bit microprocessor and take it out in silicon.
Okay.
Same thing, no? The same thing, basically, who did not get into IIT sometimes go there and do these things, right?
Sure.
So they were not basically, obviously IIT competition is much higher, but it's the same people with kids, right? Half of them basically probably are coming from India, right? They can do the same things in basically 2 semester. Why are we saying that basically our kids can't do it? I think we are not challenging them enough. I think we are not making that things interesting for them enough, right? And I think it's a collective job, right? It's a job of industry, job of academia, job of the government to make basically kids interested because we don't want to hear from the global diaspora that basically our engineers are not employable.
Yeah.
It's our job to make them employable. It's our job to basically to make them interested into 4 subjects like electronics, semiconductor, mechanical, civil, whatever they do, right? And for that, we have to make the education interesting.
Sure. Okay, so that's about talent. So the last bit that I want to address with you
Talent
is
just from a manufacturing side, right? You need all of these technicians, right?
Mhm.
You need to find a way to basically give them some amount of practical training, right? Because you can be theoretical, but the ability to run a fab in a very disciplined manner, right, has to be basically around some aspect of 6 to 8 weeks of practical training. And I think basically government and other people should look seriously that can we use the facilities like SCL Chandigarh to provide this internship training, at least a batch of 50 basically technicians every 8 weeks, right? So at least a couple of thousand by the time basically come up for fabs come, because even the fab like Vedanta, if they get all the clearances, will take at least 4 years to build, right? And 2 months, 6 into 4, right? 24 batches of 50 people, right? That will create some basically manufacturing talent to run these factories, right? Because see, engineers we can get experts, PhDs we can get experts, but we cannot get technicians that expert level, right? That's we have to produce locally, right? And yes, we can send them to some fabs in Taiwan and all those things for training, but that will be much more difficult. We have a basically good facility sitting in Chandigarh. May not be same technology load, but the factory discipline of basically how to handle the wafer, how to handle the process parameter. It's, it's not that different. It's different, but it's not different. At least we can train some people over there, right? I think that is something else which we need to do.
that also provides a opportunity for some entrepreneurs to look at, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so coming back to the question that I was asking for an entrepreneurs, right? So given that semiconductor manufacturing is a highly capital intensive, as well as and the recent sort of Vedanta Foxconn story has shown that it's not just the money, there is a lot more to it than just the money, right? From people who want to sort of start entrepreneurship in this field, in semiconductors, right, across the board, design, skill, testing, packaging, manufacturing, whatnot, how do you see what are the low hanging fruits and what are the areas to look upon for those people?
I think basically the right thing for entrepreneurs and for the country is to basically explore the possibility of fabless products.
Okay.
And when I say fabless products, it doesn't have to be very like a out of the world product or basically some very complex chips, right? A lot of basically simple high volume applications, right? Which need attention. A TV tuner chip, right? A ignition chip in the two-wheeler, right? 8-bit microcontroller, 16-bit microcontroller to basically control my microwave. Now, there are basically so many of these small opportunities which can be basically tackled. And for basically some of these entrepreneurs, you don't need 100 million volume or something like that, right? Even if they get basically a couple of million chips per year type of the volume, but make it customized, make it basically cost effective, make it with the enhanced functions, right? For these applications, there are basically thousands of applications. And I think more and more we are going to see very customized chips. Rather than generic microprocessors or generic microcontroller, right? When I need a basically a controller chip for a two-wheeler, why can't it have a very specific function which is meant for two-wheeler rather than using a generic microcontroller for everything else? So I think this mid-volume specialized chips can be done by basically entrepreneurs with government support in form of DLI. Some of the investors are also warming up, right? It's no technical idea, right? I think that's the best place Services is always basically easy way to basically get started, but I'll leave that aside for other people to comment on that. Right? But I think this customized functional chips for basically various applications, right? I think that could be a way to get started by the young entrepreneurs.
What about the other areas like skill enhancement, and if there is a manufacturing, for example, the example that you gave about upskilling operators and technicians, right? What about those?
I think it's good, but it's not big enough, right? Basically, because academic institutions will do their job. So beyond academic institutions, maybe some training, some basically that kind of academies and all of those things. One thing at least I'm noticing it, and different people will have different view, right? Is that people want to get a job after they graduate. Right? Don't want to go through another basically certification course or something like that, right? So whatever we can institutionalize within the basically course or framework of the course, right? That basically long-term sustainable pipeline for scaling it here, right? So, but yeah, there is a skilling opportunities and all of those things, but I did not mention that because it's not a large enough, right?
Okay.
Having products is basically where the startup and entrepreneurs can get best the value. The second will be basically services companies with the specialized skills. The skilling also is good. But ultimately, everything is required by the product company. Whether it is basically services companies or basically skilling, they all feed into product companies at the end of the day, right? So more product companies we have, more basically demand for this auxiliary things in terms of the enabling through skilling or enabling through services will be required. Think about it. China has a 4,000 fabless companies today. If we only have 10% of that, that will create a huge demand for skilling, create huge demand for basically services companies, create basically wafer demand also. Everything basically gets better. I think although stated goal of BLI is 100 startups, but I'll say that we should have 500 startups in next 5 years.
Okay. So, Dr. Gupta, we have come to the end of this conversation. What would be your message to the community in general, not just industry, academia, people who are working into the field, students? What would be in general message to them?
So I think basically I reiterate that we need to build a more robust ecosystem for product development, domestic product development, be it electronics, be it semiconductor. I think everything will basically become better once we have the product, manufacturing gets better, skilling gets better, job demand basically, everything gets better if we have a basically robust product ecosystem. So if we can take a goal, so 30% of whatever we consume will come from the domestic companies. I think that will change India.
Okay. Okay. And we all have to play our roles. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Gupta, for doing this. Really means a lot. And we would like to sort of take this to next level and ask more and more people to come.